According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 14.5% of all Americans are living under the national poverty line. Now, 14.5% may not seem like a very high number in relation to the 100% of people living in this country, not counting the undocumented citizens, but 14.5% breaks down into 45 million men, women, and children that are struggling to live under a stubbornly high poverty line. These people are making a means on a federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour as of July 2009. So that equals out to $290 every 2 weeks, $580 monthly before taxes. So let's say a working class adult living on his own is making $580 monthly. He now has to budget that into smaller sections of monthly rent, utilities, groceries, and other miscellaneous expenses such as gas or household items. This seems like a really good reason to raise the federal minimum wage to avoid obvious scenarios of poverty such as this, obvious situations of struggling to make a means. And that's just for one person. But this particular living situation is actually highly unlikely. Statistics show that 45 million people are living under the national poverty line, but only 1.3 million of these people are confirmed to be making the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. So why are there still 44.7 million people in this country struggling to make a living? The issue here is not that the federal minimum wage is too low, but that the cost of living in the United States is too high. And to demonstrate this point, I will outline 2 arguments that make claims for and against the raising of the current minimum wage value and examine the validity of their stances. Then I'll consider both arguments as compared to my own opinion and provide an assessment. So senior economist John Schmidt for the Center for Economic and Policy Research is making the claim that raising the federal minimum wage will have no discernible effect on the impact of employment, which according to him, this topic is one of the most studied aspects in all of economics, especially when it comes to minimum wage conversation. In order to support this claim, Schmidt has collected data ranging from the early 2000s all the way up to 2013 that cross-examine the potential outcome of 11 previous and potential different wage increases and what their effects would be on aspects of employment such as labor turnover, organizational efficiency, and wage adjustments to higher earners. This particular argument by John Schmidt is a very good argument. He's taken data from numerous credible sources, such as the Minimum Wage Study Commission and various economic researchers, to present an exemplary review of trends and outcomes from previous wage increases. And each section of his study is verifiable. He makes reference to many different sources that can be found in external resources as well as at the bottom of his study. And more than once does he venture to include contra-arguments or arguments that are in opposition of his own stance or provide information that support the opposing side. And this demonstrates intellectual courage to his study and allows for stratified thinking by the consumers of the report, such as people like me. In this argument, this could be stated as raising the federal minimum wage does not have a negative impact on employment. This argument is based on expertise. The evidential support provided throughout the study are inartistic proofs. That means that the data comes from credible, qualified sources and researchers, which allow for Schmidt to help him come to his conclusion, which his conclusion is essentially a solution. And his solution is that although raising the federal minimum wage would be a positive pay increase for working class citizens and also have no undesirable effect on employment, there are even more benefits to be had alongside this increase, such as adjusting things like benefits, training hours, and requiring higher skills. So these would only be supplemental to the already positive aspects of raising the federal minimum wage. But the second argument that is in opposition of raising the minimum wage comes from the Foundation for Economic Education, and they use support from 3 separate complex arguments to make the claim that raising the minimum wage to a minimum of $15 will not help the people in poor, lower economic classes. And the 3 points they use as evidence begin with the concept that minimum wage targets workers and not the poor. And this is because there is an assumption that everyone that is working a traditional hourly wage job. Or that if someone is poor, they do still have a job. And that's not always true. And their next point states that minimum wages hurt marginalized groups, as they now have even less of a chance to be considered worth $15 an hour as opposed to a white person with similarly low skills. Finally, they claim that some minimum wages cause unemployment. They support this statement through information released by economists David Card and Alan Kruger in 1997, which was data introduced in the study that reinforces the concept that the higher the cost of the labor, the less there is a demand for it. And this entire argument is based on narrative, which combines testimonial information as well as inartistic proofs, such as expert opinions and data from external research. It is a good argument, but instead of being based on expertise, is based on authority. And that's the authority of the Foundation of Economic Education and the writers of their website. So between the pro and anti-minimum wage arguments, I would recommend the pro piece by John Schmidt to be the better argument. Although it is the side I disagree with, his use of historical data, statistics, and generalizability towards future raises brought about a much stronger case than the Foundation for Economic Education. Schmidt used science and research as his method of argument, and his use of contra-arguments demonstrated consideration to each side of the issue. The anti-minimum wage argument was also a good argument, but they used dramatic claims and little to no reference to economic trends or theories, and that made it a much less effective argument. So there are economic issues in our country that some groups of people believe to be caused by the federal minimum wage. And based on the information from both sides, the act of raising the minimum wage has been argued to be the better solution economically for both current and future working class citizens.